her colleagues, her male colleagues. And this woman, this flight attendant, and her attorney, they decided to go to court and to invoke equal rights. In that time, that was the treaty, the Rome Treaty, which had this rule of equal rights. But they needed somebody to go to the court and to get a decision from the court. So they did it, and that was in the 70s. And now, from this point on, from this moment on, you had really a development of equal rights of women in the West, in the European states. But it really needed somebody who goes to the court on your bikes and takes this right. And I liked very much your speech about the Constitution, because it's kind of a constitutional right, even it was written in a European treaty, but it's considered like a constitutional right, but you have to take it, you have to go to a court, and that's really one of our, what we can do as a lawyer. I mean, I'm not a politician, I can't talk in front of a great audience and try to convince everybody, but I can try to convince a judge by some arguments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, can I request Ms. Arundhati Sehgal, Head Corporate Communication, Escorts Limited.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, the Indian National Bar Association, especially Mr. Ramaswamy, who invited me here, chairperson and the esteemed panelists. And it's very interesting, actually, to see, probably is the first forum where I'm seeing a lot of, men sitting around here. Mostly, most of the women empowerment sessions that we do, it's filled with women, and we see one or two, so it's a very interesting session to have. I have a presentation, but I'll keep it extremely simple. I just want to share I'm not a lawyer, I'm a public relations and a communications professional working in a corporate, one of the oldest corporates of India, the Escorts Limited. And over the years, what we've seen is, as I have grown up, I've grown up to be, I would say, one of the most privileged families, have had opportunities. And until I grew up and went into college, I never even understood that women per se was a problem in society, because we had opportunities, we had freedom to think, we had everything to do, and then suddenly when you go out, and I worked with an NGO in the beginning of years of my life, and I really understood that, oh my God, there is a completely different world outside. I'm going to quickly take you through somebody who's actually Mary Kom. I'm sure all of you know about her. A fighter, a survivor, a winner, and the most of all, a woman from almost a marginalized community, but fought and came forward. Now, as ma'am had said a little earlier, why do we have to fight? This is our right, it's a freedom, we are supposed to be equal. We have a number of leaders in the country. A lot of women have had the privilege to achieve success. We are right now in the new India where we've seen, although there's a lot more to happen, as every one of them has shared, and a lot has happened. So we see change. However, we still feel that the glass is still half empty. Progress is limited to a privileged few. Reality is still very grim in larger sections of society. As urban India, a lot of us have opportunity to get educated, ask for our rights, have options to go out and study, but the larger section, the larger population of the country, which is the rural India, still suffers. I think has been extremely well illustrated by my previous speakers. I don't need to say more. And we still live in the world of illiteracy and superstition. And we continue to be a country of contradictions. All this has been mentioned. We have a declining sex ratio, working women. As part of a corporate, member of a corporate organization, many organizations are still struggling to give equal status to women. As an organization, I'm very proud to say that we do have committees where we look at women. We have committees where we also have sessions that we do with the workmen and their families. We face several situations. In fact, in the very recent Women's Day, we formed a forum where we will now support or at least help create awareness among the women, the workforce, and their families and their women, largely focusing on taking them out of their houses and just looking at children, but to make them understand what happens within the organization, what are their husbands doing in the office, what are the opportunities that they have as individuals. And that's an area that we're working on as an organization. But as I said earlier, we are full of contradictions in our country. Maternal deaths, girls married off before 18. Even today's newspaper talks about the same story. 70% of the population of ours is women and children, but yet we really do not cater to them well enough. Women constitute half of the world's population, nearly 2/3 of its work power, receive 1/10 of the world's income, but less than 1/10 of the world's property, 1/100th of the world's property. A lot of this information we know, a lot of organizations are working on it, a lot of us have thoughts about it, have interest, but where does the problem actually lie? I think that again was illustrated and specifically mentioned using the various constitutions, the various programs, the various initiatives, but it's all in the gender culture that we have, the gender culture, the mindset, and we need to set free our rural women. And setting free doesn't necessarily, at least in my opinion, mean that they need to step out and go and work. Largely, empowerment means that even if they're at home, they need to be given equal rights. They need to be equal thinkers. They just don't need to be sitting and taking care of families, but they need to have decision-making capacity. They don't necessarily have to step out and be financially supporting the family, but they need to be treated as equal partners to the family and society. A few thoughts from my end in terms of mindset and bias. I think we all probably agree, but I really don't know how we can take steps forward to break the stereotypes, the preference for boys as caretakers, and largely the patriarchal society that kind of subdues us, subjected to all kinds of torture and stuff. It is an uphill task, but I think as the very few privileged of the society, we could start as the first step, and I think not just women, but even men within this forum and outside can make that step. So I think the most important is we have support of the legal system, we have support of the organizations, the programs organized, but everything finally has to begin from home is where I feel is going to make the huge difference. It needs to address the biased attitude towards the girl child. Women have been oppressed, have been treated as second-class citizens, but I think it's those women who have been treated need to step out, need to stand up, and stop the subjection of their children or the girl child in their family. This is just a thought I thought, as a girl, as a woman, this is not just, just a quote, I've got my mother's eyes, my father's nose, my granny's smile, and a mind of my own. Please let me live. And I think it's a slow change, but I'm sure all of you, all women and rural women especially, not just the privileged one, need to have an aspiration to reach this goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Now, yes.
Having talked about the constitution.
Ma'am, having talked about the Constitution and all the articles, there is this Article 44 which talks about the Uniform Civil Code. The condition of women under all the personal laws in India, I suppose, is deplorable in certain aspects. So, will implementation of Article 44 lead to or will be a major step towards women empowerment is my question to the panel.
Will Lata Krishnamurthy, please, can you?
Okay. Whenever you talk, of course, it's there in the directive principles of state policy that we should have uniform civil code. But the problem when you touch that question is because we are a multi-ethnic groups, a multi-religious sort of a society, it immediately touches a raw nerve with the minority groups. They immediately get threatened that their religious rights are going to be interfered with. So you'll remember that in the Chabanu case, what happened? A Muslim gentleman was married to a 40-year-old woman, and then he brought in another wife, and said talak, talak, talak to the first wife and divorced her. A system that is not even approved by the Quran. And then she had to leave home. And then when the matter came up to the Supreme Court, what did she want? She said, at least give me maintenance. She didn't want to remain married to him. She wanted maintenance. And the Supreme Court rightly said that this is a civil right and therefore she's entitled to be maintained, and they invoked the provisions of equality in the Constitution. But the Muslim community as a whole, especially their misguiding, their leaders who are out to misguide the people, said that there is a huge threat to their identity, and they started burning the effigies of the Supreme Court judge, Mr. Justice Chandrachud, the late Justice Chandrachud, I should say. And then when that happened, the politicians who were always ready to kind of pamper one religious community because they thought of them as a vote bank. I don't want to make forays into political arena, but since you have asked that question, I'm afraid I'm constrained to say it. They brought in, ironically, an act by the name Indian Women's Right to Maintenance Act. It was such a misnomer. What they actually did under the act was to take away the right of a Muslim woman to ask for maintenance. And they said that she will only be governed by her personal law. So that is how, there is just no commitment to really making that equality clause a reality. There's no political will, which is why I'm saying the legislature should have 50% women, when such a thing can never come to pass.
Ma'am, and what about Section 120? Section 125 of CRPC, which already guaranteed maintenance irrespective of your personal law. So, even
In spite of that, why so much of objection? Because criminal procedure, it's uniform, it's a secular law. So at least there shouldn't be any objection about the maintenance clause under Section 125, but there is. So what is the reason behind that?
Okay, you'll be happy to know that there has been a recent judgment which says that under 125, Section 125 of the Criminal Procedure Code, where the woman is destitute and she has just no way of getting any kind of money to maintain herself, they say that personal laws are not to be brought in, and this should be decided purely on the lady's economic position, and the courts have interpreted it and extended it to the minority community. I'm not able to readily recall the judgment, but it has been given.
Ma'am, I want to say something. I read many times, I read basically in Rig Veda that yatra narayantu pujyate ramante tatra devata. जहाँ नारियों की पूजा होती है वहाँ पर देवता भी वास करते हैं. लेकिन बेसिकली आज तक अगर मैं अपने इंडियन कल्चर की बात करूं तो आज तक मैंने यहाँ तक कि भगवान ने भी हमारे गॉड ने भी ऐसी गलतियाँ की हैं जो एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं है. अगर हम राम को हम कहते हैं मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम. इट्स नॉट माई इंटेंशन टू हर्ट एनीवन, लेकिन राम को हम पुरुषोत्तम कहते हैं, विच मीन्स मोर देन परफेक्ट. लेकिन वो एक अच्छे हस्बैंड कभी भी नहीं बन पाए. और ना ही हम अगर अपने गॉडिस लक्ष्मी हम कहते हैं लक्ष्मी दुर्गा, सभी के कहीं ना कहीं हर किसी को हरेस्ट जरूर किया गया है. फिर भी आज तक हम सिर्फ और सिर्फ लॉज, हमारे वेद, हमारी संस्कृति सबके बारे में बात करते हैं, लेकिन आज तक कोई ऐसा कोई भी इस तरह का एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट नहीं बन पाया. ऐसा हमारे दिल से नहीं अभी तक आ पाई आवाज. ना तो हम किसी रिस्पेक्ट कर पाए हैं और ना तो हम मुझे देख करके अभी जो सिचुएशन है ना तो लगता है हम कर पाएंगे.
Okay, permit me to answer that question
want to,
in English, because okay, most of them don't understand. I'm going to translate the question first. Okay. He says that even our gods are imperfect, because though they're supposed to be perfect, and they say that Ram is supposed to be an Indian god, an avatar of Vishnu who came down here. He says he was far from a perfect husband, because he sent his wife when she was pregnant into the forest, and said that because there's a dhoban, a washerman, who said that she lived, she was taken away, spirited away by that mythology, Ravan, and taken away by that, the demon king, out of India to Lanka, from where he brought her back afterwards. The washerman is supposed to have said that if my wife had done something like that, his wife is supposed to have gone out somewhere and he didn't know where her whereabouts was. This is all stories, of course. It's got no reality like that. So when she came back, he refused to take her in. He said, you think I'm like Ram to take back a woman who stayed with another man? Her chastity is in question. So she'll have to do the Agni Pariksha, which means to walk through fire. It's the ordeal of fire ordeal. So she has to walk through the fire to prove her purity, which she does in the end and then goes away because she says, I'm cheesed off with you. What do you think to put me through this test? And she leaves. No, but that is, and then she has the children somewhere in the forest. Now let us come back to what you first started. You know, I almost forgot the question that you said. Really speaking, women don't want to be idealized as goddesses. We don't want to be these goddesses. We don't want perfection. We have a right to be as imperfect as any male. You see, we don't want to be put on this pedestal only to bring us pulling down when we, and watching our every movement, that we have to be all the time be, you know, minding our P's and Q's. We are human. We will err as much as the men do. So we don't want that. We only want equality. We don't want to be this, you know, Sita Devi. We do not want to be these goddesses who you say are put on a pedestal. We want to be respected for being human beings. We have our dignity and equal status. So we don't want anything else. And the rest of it is, don't go into all this mythology. I agree with you. We are fed on stories like this, and therefore people have this expectation of a woman that she should be absolutely perfect. And there cannot be even the slightest of fault in her character, you know, in any way. So they should speak softly, they should eat less, they should do all kinds of things. They will go on childbearing, but they're not supposed to mumble. They're always supposed to wear a smile. So all these unrealistic expectations of a woman are all because of the misunderstanding of the mythology. You must also read the first ever women's rights speech that was made by Draupadi in Mahabharata, which is so much older, where she says, I'm not a chattel. When the rest of Europe and everywhere else women were seen as chattel, she gave her first right and she said, what right have you to make me the stake for your dice game? And then gave the most eloquent speech on women's liberation and women's rights, and said she's not a chattel, that she's her own person. So draw a line, mythology. There are very many beautiful stories. I can't immediately say all of that now, but there is a place for all this. It should not be